Welcome, students. So I hope you're all having a great time playing the food game in the Week 3 forum. And so the Week 3 forum is the only forum where you're not going to be doing a peer review. So from now on, when you do Week 5, Week 7, Week 9, and Week 11, all the other forums are all going to be peer review forums. And so this lecture, today's lecture, is going to be about what is a peer review? What exactly do you do in a peer review forum? And in the past, many of my students were too shy to do a peer review. Basically what you do is you're going to post a rough draft of your essay into the forum, and then everybody will then comment any mistakes or anything that needs to be corrected into your paper. And so you're going to be correcting each other's paper. And many students tell me that they're too shy, or they're too afraid to insult the other student, or that they are not really good at English. English is not their first language, or that grammar, they're not very good at grammar. And so today's lecture will help you gain confidence in doing peer review, and also to teach you that you don't have to be an expert in grammar. You don't have to be an expert in peer review in order to peer review other students' papers. The good thing about peer review is that when you peer review someone else's paper, it helps reinforce your knowledge of the writing process, because you're going to be looking over somebody's thesis statement and then telling that person, gee, that person did a really good job on their thesis statement or not. So I will go over all the different details of how to do a peer review and how not to be nervous to do a peer review. So your Week 5, Week 7, Week 9, Week 11, in other words, all of the remaining forums in this class will all be peer review forums. And what I like about peer review is that it builds community. It builds a community of learners where we learn to work as a team and to help improve each other's work. That is actually the goal of a peer review. It's like a study group where all the students get together to study. So think of it as a way of helping each other and helping each other improve your writing grade. And so this means that you need to post your first post, your rough draft post, by Wednesday. It's really important that you post on time so that students and I all have time to look at your rough draft to give you feedback. If you post your rough draft on Sunday, no one's going to have time to look at your rough draft, because if you post by Wednesday, then everyone will have time to look at your feedback from Thursday through Sunday. So always post by Wednesday so that we all have time to look over your rough draft and improve your rough draft so that you can get a better grade. Remember that we're using the writing process in this class. This means that each draft of your paper is going to be better and better. And you cannot turn in the same rough draft for all of your assignments, because then you get a lower grade. Each draft needs to show improvement based on teacher feedback or student feedback. So if I keep getting the same paper where that shows that you didn't even bother to read the forum or any of my feedback, then your grade gets lower and lower. On the other hand, if you include the teacher feedback and the student feedback, which is the whole purpose of a peer review forum, then your grade gets better and better. So that's why they call it a process, writing process, because each draft gets better, and the more you work at writing, the better you will get. So without further ado, I will now go over what is a peer review. So let's share the screen and share. So what exactly is a peer review? So I will now start the slideshow, and I will start it from the beginning. I believe I've got to do it from the beginning, not transition, slideshow from the beginning. Whoa, isn't that a cool whatchamacallit? Okay, so here I playing around with. So how to do the Week 5, 7, 9, and 11 peer review forums. And that's Week 3 instructor session. And so in this lecture, we are going to work on what is a peer review? And we're going to work on the purpose of a peer review, the benefits of a peer review, constructive criticism, how to receive feedback, how to give feedback, peer review forum, and how to use the peer review forum in the real world. I got carried away with all of these little things. That was fun. The purpose of this presentation on peer review. Many students have trouble with the peer review forum. In this class, the peer review forums are the week 5, 7, 9, and 11 forums. In this presentation, I define what peer review is. I talk about the importance of peer review, and I give students templates of model peer reviews they can follow. Many students worry they are not strong writers and they cannot give constructive feedback, or they may hurt other student feelings. Being positive and open about the process makes peer review a fun activity. Provide the best feedback you can. You don't have to be a professional writer. Look at a peer review as a way of making your essays better, not as negative criticism. A peer review is when you review another student's paper to give it feedback so that your classmate can get a better writing grade. A peer review is also when others review your rough draft and give you feedback so that you can get a better writing grade. A peer review is when one student reviews another student's so on the job, whenever you get a job evaluation, and if one worker evaluates the job performance of another worker, that's also known as a peer review. A peer review or a job performance is also when your boss reviews your job performance. And a peer review is when one writer critiques another writer's work on research. So, class, what is peer review? What is the purpose of peer review? Then you have different kinds of feedback. So then the first kind of feedback that you can give other students is appreciation feedback. In appreciation feedback, you give feedback where you tell someone how much you like their work or how much you appreciate all the hard work someone has put into writing their paper. When you praise other people's work, you build their confidence in their writing abilities. You could say something like, Denisha, you did a great job at your thesis statement, or you are so good at putting your sentences together. You are a whiz at your paper. Your paper shows great writing because you correctly placed your thesis, and your thesis makes so much sense to me. And your 3 reasons match your topic sentence perfectly. As a result, you have a great paper. So, so one kind of feedback that you can give other students is you could tell students what you like and the positive aspects of someone else's paper. I love your topic, and I was about to choose that same topic myself. So that's one kind of feedback, praise. And everybody loves being praised. Second kind of feedback, mentoring feedback. So if you're having trouble with your rough draft, you can reach out to other students and ask them for help. You could say, well, I'm having trouble with my thesis statement. I'm not quite sure it covers the topic. Can anyone out there help me with a better thesis statement? So it's okay to reach out to other students and ask questions like that. And then when you answer those other students' questions, that's known as mentoring feedback. So mentoring feedback focuses on helping someone who asks for help. You are mentoring other students by answering their questions. Don't be afraid to reach out to others, especially if you're having problems with APA. That's the whole purpose of a peer review forum, is that we're all working together as a community of learners in order for everyone to work as a team to do better on their papers. So you could say, I don't know how to do a thesis. Can someone help me? Or I can't find good sources for my papers. Anyone know how to do APA? Or Professor H, how do I use a database? What exactly is the difference between Google and Google Scholar? And so it's okay to reach out for help, and you can ask others for help by just posting a post. Right after you post your rough draft, you can then add another post saying, well, when I wrote my rough draft, I just wasn't sure about the structure. Can everyone, when you read over my rough draft, can you tell me if it makes sense to you? that sort of thing. So you can ask others what you want us to look at. So that's known as mentoring feedback. And when we mentor others, it makes us feel good to mentor and help others. Another kind of feedback, coaching feedback. Coaching feedback is when you simply read someone's rough draft and give them suggestions on how they can improve their paper. So coaching feedback focuses on giving people suggestions on how they can improve their skills. This is also known as areas of improvement feedback. In writing a peer review, you don't have to be a writing or grammar expert to give other students suggestions on how they can improve their paper. Don't be afraid to stick out your neck to help another student. Nobody will laugh at your remarks. Pointing out grammar mistakes will not offend anyone as long as we all understand that we are correcting the paper, not the student. Remember, you are not evaluating or grading the paper. That's my job. You're simply giving suggestions or giving your 2 cents on how students can improve their paper. Evaluation feedback. Evaluation feedback is what the teacher does. For evaluation feedback is when the teacher gives the student feedback, and then the teacher would then give that student a grade. So did that student only participated 2 times, or did she participate 3 times, or did she not participate at all? And that's what I would grade, based on that. So if you participated only like a little bit, or if you leave out your initial post and you only posted 2 students, then you get a 50%. So evaluation feedback is something you don't have to worry about, because you only have to worry about helping others by giving suggestions on how they can improve their paper. So you leave the grading to me. Evaluation feedback is when the teacher gives a final grade on the final draft of the paper. This is the only kind of feedback that is not included in your peer. In other words, you don't have to worry about this kind of feedback. After your paper has gone through the peer review process, where you included all of my teacher feedback and student feedback from the peer review forum, and then after you turn in your final draft, I then look over your paper and give you that final grade. That's known as evaluation feedback. So here is the ACE method. So this is a catchy way to remember how to give good feedback. A, appreciation. Compliment other people's papers. Say something that you like about another person's paper. Coaching. Give some advice on how that student can improve his paper. Evaluation. I will give a grade on that student's paper and give my feedback in the peer review forum. And therefore you have to include my teacher feedback in your final draft. And so an easy way to remember how to do feedback is the ACE method of feedback. So appreciation, compliment other student papers. Coaching, give suggestions on how others can improve their paper. Evaluation, pay attention to your teacher's grade and feedback and include that feedback and improvement in your final draft. What does ACE stand for? So then you go appreciation, coaching, and evaluation. So that makes it very easy for you to remember how to do feedback. What are the benefits of peer review? It builds teamwork. Peer review allows students to clarify their own ideas as they explain them to classmates and as they formulate questions about their classmates' writing. This is helpful to writers at all skill levels. In other words, when you do a peer review, you reinforce your knowledge of the writing process. And when we do a peer review, think of it as a study group where we all work together for a common cause of helping someone with their grade. So as you look over other people's papers, think of it as a way to improve your writing grade. Peer review builds student investment in writing and helps students understand the relationship between their writing and their coursework in ways that undergraduates sometimes overlook. So in other words, when you do the peer review, you're like being the teacher, like me. You're looking over someone's paper, you're analyzing and evaluating if someone else's paper makes sense. if that paper has good essay structure, and if that paper has any grammar or punctuation mistakes. And so you, and when you do that, you reinforce your knowledge of grammar and writing. And also, when we work together towards a common cause to get a better grade, we are engaging in teamwork because we're becoming a community of learners, and we learn to bond and trust each other. Studies have shown that even strong writers benefit from the process of peer review. Students report they learn as much or more from identifying and articulating weaknesses in a peer's paper as from incorporating peers' feedback into their own work. When stronger writers write papers, weaker writers can use the stronger writers' papers as a template for their own writing. In other words, don't be afraid to look over other people's papers. In other words, you're only required to read two student papers, but don't be afraid to look over 4 or 5 student papers, or even 6 or 7, or the whole forum, just to see the style of everybody else's papers. And if somebody wrote a paper, an excellent paper, you can then use that excellent paper as your template if you're a weaker writer, or if English is not your first language. So peer groups learn from each other. And peer review allows students to clarify their own ideas, and it allows students to communicate with each other, bond with each other, and tell each other how or why their writing is weak or strong. And students usually understand each other better than they understand the teacher, because students are not as afraid talking to each other than they are talking to the teacher. Peer review provides professional experience for students having their writing reviewed. Peer review is the process by which professionals in the field get published. It's how managers and coworkers provide feedback in the workplace, and it's a skill with practical applications. So show appreciation. Tell students what they did right. Instill confidence. Everyone likes to be appreciated. What are the benefits of doing a peer review? We engage in teamwork. We learn from each other. We bond and trust each other. And we learn and we reinforce the writing process. What are the misconceptions about peer review? I have to be a good writer in order to do peer review. Don't worry. If you are not a good writer, you can still do peer review. You don't have to be good at grammar. You don't have to be good. In other words, even if you feel you are weak in English, you can still tell other students how they can improve their writing. After all, we critique movies, don't we, without being movie directors and without having a degree in film studies. So why can't we critique other student papers? After all, we all have an opinion, right? So as long as you have an opinion, you can give your opinion on other student papers. So peer review does not require you to be a good writer. Now, my English grammar stinks. Don't worry if your English grammar stinks, or if English is your second language. You're in these English writing classes, we're all in the same boat. We're all in this class to review our English grammar and to get better at English grammar. I'm doing the English teacher's job. You are not doing the English teacher's job. In other words, you're not grading the paper. That's the English teacher's job. All you're doing is just giving suggestions. So by all means, you're not doing my job. Instead, you're just helping your peers get a better grade. I'm afraid of offending other classmates. I'm afraid people laugh at what I write. Don't worry, after years and decades of me teaching these classes, no one has ever laughed at someone else's peer review remark. So what are the misconceptions of peer review? Oh, I'm not a very good writer. You don't have to be a good writer. I stink at grammar, and English is not my first language. You don't have to be an English grammar Nazi. All you got to do is just have an opinion and then write your opinion about what someone else's paper, how they can improve it. So there's no way you need to be afraid of doing a peer review, because we're correcting the paper, as I said many times before, We're correcting the paper, we're not correcting the student. How do we give feedback? In other words, how do we receive the feedback? How should we take it? Remember, feedback is just suggestions, so don't take it personally. When we give feedback, we're giving constructive criticism. Constructive criticism is a helpful way of giving feedback that provides specific, actionable suggestions. Rather than providing general advice, constructive criticism gives specific recommendations on how to make positive improvements. Constructive criticism is clear, to the point, and easy to put into action. In other words, you don't just say, you know, John, your paper it sucks, and then you walk away. If I were to do that to you, let's say I give you an F and just say, your paper stinks, and then walk away with no feedback, how are you going to learn to improve your paper if I don't give you feedback? So that is a whole nature of constructive criticism feedback, is so that you know what areas of improvement to do for your paper. And so when you give a feedback to other students, make sure that it's actionable. Make sure it's something the student can do. Make sure that it's specific. Make sure that you recommend, and you're not pushy and you're not abusive. And use the sandwich method. Say something positive, then talk about the areas of improvement, and then write something positive. Positive, negative, positive. That's known as the sandwich method. So you don't have to be an expert at peer review. Simply give actionable suggestions. Actionable suggestions are like, Jan, you put your thesis statement in the wrong place. The teacher wants you to put the thesis statement as the last sentence of the first paragraph, and you have the thesis statement in your first sentence. No, that's not the correct way. That's where the hook goes. So, or you're missing a thesis statement, or you don't have 3 reasons. So you need to put 3 reasons into your thesis statement. So that's known as an actionable suggestion. In other words, it's a suggestion in which a student can take action to fix their paper. You can comment on the topic. So you can start your peer review by commenting on the student topic and telling him whether or not you agree or disagree with the topic. But if you disagree with the topic, be polite, be courteous, be gracious. Let's say someone says, I think President Biden is a great president, and you don't agree with that. So instead of shredding someone to bits, you just agree to disagree. And that's basically what we need to do more in American society, is agree to disagree. Because some people like Biden and some people don't. Some people like Trump, some people don't. That's the way it goes. And so we just have to learn to realize we're not all the same, and we all have different opinions, and respect those opinions. In this way, when we do our week 9 peer review, week 9 persuasive essay, and one student said, the mask mandate, that's not good. Another one said, mask mandates are necessary. So even if you have differing or opposite opinions, I always tell students, netiquette, and just look at how the other person thinks and then use it in your rebuttal. I'm going to cover how we do counter arguments and how we can use the other side and rebut the other side to strengthen our arguments. So the other side actually provides ammunition for us to write a better persuasive essay. So I'm going to talk about that later on. So getting back to peer review, so you can agree to disagree, comment on the topic, you can comment on the essay structure. For instance, you could say, John, all your paragraphs are too short. Each paragraph, according to the teacher, it's got to be 5 to 7 sentences. Or you could say, John, you're missing your introduction. You only have 2 paragraphs, and this assignment requires 5 paragraphs. You're missing 3 paragraphs. Or you could say, you have too many different APA citations in 1 paragraph. The teacher only wants 1 in-text citation per paragraph. That's known as pie structure. So that sort of thing. Or you could say, yes, you did a great job, John, of stating the topic and the reason, the topic and the opinion. Where are your reasons? That sort of thing. And so when you comment on someone's essay structure, you can then answer these questions. Are all his paragraphs 5 or 7 sentences long? Does he have 3 parts of an essay? Remember that 3 parts of an essay is introduction, body paragraph, conclusion paragraph. Does he have one central idea backed up by supporting paragraphs? Is his thesis correctly placed as the last sentence of the first paragraph? Does his thesis have 3 reasons? Do his body paragraphs relate back to his thesis? Does the introduction contain a bridge, a hook, and then the thesis statement? Do the topic sentences relate back to the, do the subpoints in the body paragraphs relate back to the topic sentences? Does the essay make sense? Are there APA errors? Does the student include APA citations? Is the reference citation at the end of the paper? How can I make the paper more exciting? Are there any grammar mistakes? So tell students what they did right. Give them encouragement. Instill confidence in fellow students. Make other students feel good about their writing. Be considerate when you give suggestions on how other people can correct their paper. Think about think about the well-being of other classmates and how they feel. Follow the golden rule. Do you understand how to do a peer review? How do you do a peer review? So, how do we receive the feedback? Okay, so are you a positive or a negative person? When someone critiques what you do, when somebody tells you, oh my goodness, you did a bad job at such and such, when your boss comes up and tells you what you did wrong on your job, how do you receive the feedback? Are you grouchy? Are you defensive? Are you sad or depressed? The best way to receive feedback is to always have a growth mindset. In other words, you want to know how you can improve. You actually seek out feedback, because if someone tells you to do something, you gleefully, joyfully receive that feedback to help improve your writing or improve your job performance and improve how you, and I tell you this, it's not an easy thing to do. It's not easy when someone tells you you did something wrong and then not to get defensive, okay? Because that's human instinct, the fight or flight instinct. But we have to fight that, and we need to be positive. So always be positive when someone gives you an actionable suggestion on how you can improve your whatever it is you're doing. So how to receive feedback? Be positive. Be a good sport. When someone critiques your work or gives you feedback, just be in good spirits and realize that we are all here to help you, not hurt you. Receive feedback with a spirit of fun. Don't take it personally. Remember, we're correcting the paper, not you. Instead of dreading a job performance review or the peer review, seek out a review as a way to improve your job performance. Stay positive. Have a growth mindset. And so on the job, ask your boss what you can do to improve your job. If you are dinged on your job performance review, just think of the ding as an area of improvement you need to do. Always think and stay positive. When other students give you feedback, or when I give you feedback, stay positive and just use the feedback to fix your paper. So always stay positive. If you receive a lot of red ink on your paper, or you receive a low grade on your paper, give yourself an A for effort. After all, in life, we all get low grades, get fired, get a divorce. These are negative events that happen to all of us, beyond our control. But in this life, even though we cannot control getting a low grade, or getting fired, or getting a divorce, but we can control how we respond or react to these events. And that's what matters. So no matter what obstacle gets thrown your way, or you get a negative job performance or negative feedback, it's how you bounce back from that feedback that defines you as a person, that defines your integrity. And I know for a fact that my students have a lot of integrity because I believe in all of my students. So even if you get a low grade, give yourself an A for effort. For it is the second score of A that you give yourself for effort that counts in life. So give yourself an A for effort. So you give yourself that second score. Well, you know, maybe I got an F on my paper, but hey, I tried hard. So I give myself an A for effort. And that's what counts. And then use the feedback from your job performance, or use the feedback from teacher that I give you for your paper, and then find a way to improve on your paper so that you can get that A. Okay? But in the meantime, give yourself an A for effort. For it is not the first score of F or the negative comments that count in life. It is the second score of A for effort that you give yourself that counts. It is how we respond to adversity, bad news, problems, obstacles, low grades that define our character, our integrity, and most of all, our inner strength. People who respond well or positively to negative feedback, or who bounce back quickly from adversity, research shows live long, happier lives. In this life, the first score of F does not count. It's the A that counts, the second score. And I got all of this from a book that in a book club I was reading called Thanks for the Feedback, in case you're wondering where I got all of this positivity from. Because even for me personally, when I used to get negative feedback on whatever I did, I used to be quite defensive, okay? This whole second score stuff, it's not very easy, and it's not something that you're instantly going to do after you listen to this PowerPoint. It takes a lot of practice because you got to break old habits of being so defensive and stuff, and that takes a lot of practice. And for me personally, it took a lot of practice. It still does. You know, it's like an ongoing process of telling myself, I've got to be positive about this. Give yourself, so overcoming adversity, give yourself a second score of A on everything you do. Just have fun with the comments. Just think of it as a way to improve your writing grade and your paper. And don't think of feedback as an angry person pointing their accusatory finger at you, saying, you're a terrible writer. Instead, think of peer review as a way to have fun together, to work together, and then you also realize when you look at other people's papers, they made the same mistakes you made. That's usually the side effect, or the bystander effect of peer review, is you realize misery loves company. Everybody made the same mistake, which is true. I'm always writing, you know, John, you need to put your thesis as the last sentence of the first. You know how many times I've had to write that same sentence? Like 25 times among 25 students. So when you see a particular feedback I give you, that's usually the case. I did the same thing for 25 other people. So don't think you're the only one I gave it that fit feedback to. And that's the good thing about the peer review forum, is then it's all naked and exposed. Everybody gets to see everybody's mistakes. So when you do a peer review forum, nobody is trying to attack you. No need to feel scared that people are laughing at your paper, or feel threatened by better writers if you happen to be language, you're an ESL, or you're not a good writer. So in this class, peer review is a fun, interactive group activity where a community of learners get together to improve each other's work. Remember, as I've said by now a gazillion times, we are correcting the paper, not the student. So we are all in this together. So relax, let your hair down, and have fun. See, think of it like this. Remember the previous picture of the guy pointing his finger, saying, you're a terrible writer? No, it's everybody working together, a common cause, of having a good writing grade. So think of the forum as a fun coaching tutoring session, and think of it as a way to improve your grade. And always think positively. So when you're doing coaching, if for example your boss is giving you advice on your job performance, you should ask yourself, is she coaching me or is she evaluating me? Coaching is when someone is just giving you advice on how to do your job better. Evaluating is when you are being graded or ranked on how well you are doing the job. Knowing the difference between whether or not you are being coached or being evaluated will influence how you react or receive feedback. And so when you get the job performance, evaluating is if you don't do this correctly, you're fired. Coaching is you need to do this and this and this and this better because I see that you're not doing that and that and that. So knowing the difference between when your boss is saying coaching or evaluating will make the difference between how you react. So that way, every time your boss gives you advice, you don't have to feel threatened if you can determine when your boss is just giving you suggestions and when the boss is actually evaluating you. So you got to know the difference. So remember, there are 3 kinds of feedback that we have in peer review. You have appreciation feedback, in which you compliment someone on their work; coaching, in which you give advice on how someone can improve their work; and evaluation is when your boss or teacher grades you on how well you have done your job. Coaching is simply someone giving you advice, and as a result, you feel more comfortable and less stressed on taking this advice. So be positive when you are coached and have a growth mindset. Be curious on wanting to know how you can improve your job or paper. Reach out to your boss to let him or her mentor you, especially if you are new. And so I'm actually on a new job currently, and I'm reaching out to other faculty members because I want to improve my job, especially since I'm brand new at that school. And it helps me with my onboarding if I ask questions to my peers and not have to bother the boss all the time. I only ask the boss the most important questions. So I try to be positive and I reach out because I always want to know. And this goes for the end of class surveys, talking about feedback. At the end of the class, you guys, students, are going to be giving me feedback on how well I taught. So I always encourage my students to fill out their end of class surveys so that, for instance, you would say, you know, Professor H, your lectures are too long, or your lectures are boring. Why can't you have more question and answer sessions? Or why can't you do this and this and this? That sort of thing. And I remember it was a student who said, I think you use Microsoft Word too much. I prefer if you use PowerPoint. So this is why I've been using PowerPoint in this particular lecture, because some students said they prefer the PowerPoint over Microsoft Word. Because when I first started creating all these lectures, my original lecture notes were all in Microsoft Word. It's only later on, when at the end of class survey, someone said to me, oh, I prefer the PowerPoint, and that's when I started doing. And also someone said that they really like the Bitmojis and things that blink. You might have seen all of those books, you know, and some students do find that annoying, but a lot of students actually personally asked for that particular Bitmoji, that thing that goes ding, 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 ding. Oh, for me, it's a little too much, but it seems as if a lot of students seem to like that. And so they mention it in the end of class survey. So anyway, so I see the end of class survey, or the feedback that I get from you, as a way to grow and as a way to improve my teaching and as a way to know what you're thinking and what you want from my lectures. So don't be afraid to write down. So if you don't just say your lectures stink or your classes stink without saying why and without saying what I could do to fix it, like actionable suggestions. Just like if I were to walk away from your paper and just say your paper stinks, and then that's it, and then you don't know how to improve it in order to get a better grade. It's the same thing. Everybody wants actionable suggestions. So that's the art of coaching. Evaluation. When you are being evaluated, your boss is grading you on how well you are doing your job to see if you should get fired, get promoted, or get a bonus. When we are being evaluated, often we act defensive, especially if the evaluation comes out negative. This is why it is important to be able to tell if you are being coached or being evaluated by your boss. If you are being evaluated, be professional, be positive. Learn from your mistakes and own your mistakes. Then show your boss your eagerness to fix those mistakes without complaining. You can do the same thing about teacher feedback on your papers. I actually had a student who was offended by all the red marks I put on her paper. She actually said, I am a published author and I'm not even supposed to be in this class. And I'm offended that you try to correct my paper or something like that. Most students aren't. Most students are grateful, but so I can never tell how people are going to react. And that's why it is human nature to be defensive. So I'm just saying that not to be defensive, and I know from personal experience what it's like to be defensive. Trust me, I know what that's like. So if I can do it and try to be positive, anybody can do it and be positive. So just be positive. So growth versus a defensive mindset. Always maintain a growth mindset as opposed to a defensive mindset when you receive any kind of feedback. Stay curious. Focus on wanting to grow and improve in your job or your paper by participating frequently in the peer review forum. Don't just post your rough draft, read 2 people's papers and leave. Come back to the forum at the end of the week and read what kind of feedback did everybody give. And then think, how can I incorporate this into my paper? How can I grow as a writer? So if you have a growth mindset rather than a negative defensive mindset, you will find getting feedback, not just from peer review forums, any kind of feedback, fun rather than a chore. After this lecture, do you feel better about doing a peer review? Do you feel better about receiving feedback from me and your peers? How do you receive feedback on the job or in the forums? Are you defensive or are you positive? How to ask for peer review feedback. This I went over a little bit already. Okay, we went over this a little bit with mentoring. It's like you can ask. So if you think your thesis statement or if your thesis statement is weak, you can write at the in other words, when you post your rough draft, after you finish your rough draft, at the end of your rough draft, you can say, hey, do you guys think that this is a good thesis statement? Do you think I've got sentence variety? Are there any grammar errors? Because in particular, I'm really bad at knowing the difference between how to use a comma and how to use a semicolon. That always confuses me. Can you guys read through my paper and make sure I did that right? That sort of thing. So yes, you can add in extra questions and we can then mentor so that we can know what it is you think your weaknesses are. You can ask about your topic sentences. You can ask people, do you guys think that my topic sentences, the topic sentence is the first sentence of every body paragraph. And the first sentence of every body paragraph needs to relate back to your thesis statement in order to have essay coherence. And so you can ask other people, hey, when you read my paper, do you think my topic sentences relate back to my thesis? Can anyone help me? Do I have too many simple sentences? How can I vary my sentences? Where can I add transition words for better flow? Do I have really good essay structure? Do I have any grammar or punctuation mistakes? And so here are some model peer review templates of past students of what they wrote in the forum. So basically your first post is just your rough draft. That's easy. That's actually the easy part for most people. And then the second post it's the post to 2 students. So here are some model templates of your post to 2 students. So your peer review offers no criticism of the writing. A vague term like, oh, that paper's good, it doesn't do anything, because then, you don't just leave and say something is good or something is bad. And like I said before, that's very ineffective feedback. Or if you say that was interesting or the piece was informative without saying why, that's also ineffective feedback. This paper sucks and it was boring, also ineffective feedback. Effective feedback is, first, the essay introduced the challenge of your birth defect and how you have had to cope with it. Now, in the next part, I think you should add some more sentence variety, because you have too many simple sentences. Your essay is too choppy, or you're missing a topic sentence because your topic sentence does not relate back to your thesis statement, or your thesis statement is missing altogether. What exactly is your central idea? So an effective feedback always has actionable suggestions. A thorough critique is where the reviewer asks questions on the organization, the voice, and of the feedback. And so, like I said, when you give feedback, don't be sarcastic or ironic. You don't say something like, oh my goodness, you've got to be kidding me. You wrote something like that? So that's ineffective feedback. So we're not looking for sarcasm or humor. Effective feedback would be more like, let's look more closely. How can we rewrite this sentence? How can we fix this? So keep it positive. So here you would say, John, you have a great topic. I agree that guns are unnecessary. But John, you do not have 3 reasons in your thesis. You need to place your thesis as the last sentence of the first paragraph. The strengths of your essay is how descriptive you are, and I love the way you use description in your body paragraphs. Great job. So here is an example of sandwich feedback, where I start out with something positive, someone has a great topic, then I do something negative, areas of improvement, like you do not have 3 reasons in your thesis. Then I end with something positive. However, the strengths of your essays is that it's so descriptive. Okay, so here is an example of sandwich method. And then another one. Jackie, you write so much better than I do. English is not my native language, so I don't know how much I can help you. You have much better sentence structure than I do, and I love the way you use transitions. You notice that this particular student thinks that she's not very good at English. However, she does know how to admire someone else's work simply because someone else is a native speaker, and therefore she knows. So you can actually write what's good about someone's paper, not just sticking to what's bad. Model, here's another one. Jack, you are missing your so here, this person gives a lot of actionable suggestions on how somebody can fix their paper. Jack, you are missing your in-text citations. Professor H says that when you cite medical facts, you have to cite the source to avoid plagiarism. You are missing quotation marks around your direct quotes. Your paraphrase quote does not need page numbers. However, you have a great thesis statement, and here, so he's doing appreciation feedback. He's saying, however, you have a great thesis statement, you followed the thesis formula, and your body paragraphs support your thesis statement. You have great essay coherence. Lamika, you need to double space your paper. Why is your font bigger in one paragraph and smaller in another paragraph? All your font has to be the same size. Like you, I too am weak at APA. However, I found a lot of, and then you can offer sources, and you can offer sources that you found really well. So I found www.apa.org to be a great place to find, to format my paper. So your feedback matters. So don't worry if you're not a native speaker. You can just admire how someone else wrote. So I've gotten a lot of that from the ESL students, or the ELL students. Ray, you need to rewrite your thesis as the first sentence of the last paragraph in your conclusion paragraph. Your paragraph is too long. Each paragraph needs to have 5 to 7 sentences, like Professor H says. Like you, I sometimes write too much, and it is hard for me to cut down paragraphs when I have a lot to say. Yeah, that's true for me too. When I used to be in college, and then the teacher said, you got to have a 10-page paper, for instance. That was the largest, that's the maximum size, and I used to come out with 25 pages. And I would have to spend most of my time cutting it down to 10 pages like the teacher wanted. Because the teacher would take off points if you don't follow her instructions. Erica, you are missing one paragraph. In the assignment, you are supposed to have 5 paragraphs. And you're also missing your 3 reasons. So your thesis statement needs to have 3 reasons. But I love how you wrote your sentences or whatever. So you know, oh, I'm not a good writer. My English teacher says my papers are terrible. So I'm not sure how much I can help you. To me, your paper looks good. And but however, when I read your paper, I can't figure out where the thesis statement is. I'm also not very good at reading either. And I think I understand the main idea of your paper. You're sort of talking about birth defects or something. And I agree that teachers should not have guns in the classroom. Or are you saying that teachers should have guns in? Which position are you taking again? If they can't figure out what position you're taking, you wrote a really bad paper. Because the purpose of a persuasive essay is to state your position clearly and prove why that position is true, why everybody should believe your point of view. If the reader can't even figure out what that position is, that's a really bad paper. Anyway, so then you would help that person rewrite their thesis statement and rewrite their topic sentences. Mona, you have a great paper, but you don't have any sources for your in-text citation. Where did you get the information from? Professor H says that for our second essay, we are required to have 1 APA source and 1 APA in-text citation. I too am working on my sources, but I use Google for my articles. And you can also ask Professor H because she'll also help you find sources. So don't be afraid to reach out. Maria, your reference citation is missing parts. Professor H says that the reference citation is not just a website address. You need to have the author name, the date, the article name, the publication, and the date we retrieved the website, and then the web address last. You can't just have only your web address for your reference citation. I was looking at Professor H's last Zoom lecture, and she said that a lot of other students, they just write their web address. It's a common mistake. So I think that you should add all the other missing parts or you're going to lose points. So you should, but otherwise, and also I think you should go check out the Purdue OWL Library because that is really good sources. Actually, the Purdue OWL Library is a great source. Charnice, your body paragraphs do not relate back to your thesis. You are writing about many different things with no relation to each other, and your paper does not make sense. I can't tell if you're for or against abortion. What is your paper about? Professor H says the thesis statement formula is topic, opinion, reasons. She says that if you follow TOR, your paper will make sense. You should ask her about this. So don't be afraid to ask me questions or to email me if you have questions. Christina, you are using too many statistics in a row. Professor H says we only need to use 1 in-text citation per paragraph. She taught us about pie structure, so you need to watch the pie structure video in the announcements. Until I learned pie structure, I also was writing too many statistics in a row. So pie structure, according to Professor H, is P, main point from thesis. So that's your topic sentence. I, your 1 in-text citation. E, explanation for that in-text citation in 5 sentences. You should go check out Professor H's writing channel. She has a whole video on pie structure in the announcements and on her writing channel, Professor H writing channel. So my problem is I put too few statistics. I wish I could do research as well as you, Christina. Oh, Latanya, I see no mistakes in your paper. You have a great thesis. I agree that everyone should get vaccinated against COVID-19. I'm really worried about these variants. You use great reasons too about why people should get vaccinated, like they can stop the spread of COVID. If everyone gets vaccinated, we can get herd immunity. Your reasons really makes sense to me. And I am so glad that I got to peer review your paper. So don't worry and don't be afraid to reach out for help to your other students or to me if you're having trouble with your paper. If you are stuck on a source, you can ask other students to help you find a source. If you are stuck on a thesis, you can ask other students to help you with that thesis. So did these model peer reviews help you write a peer review? What will your peer review praise post sound like? What will your peer review help the student post sound like? Steps to take for the peer review forum. And so here's the checklist of what you're going to do during peer review week. So first, you need to post your rough draft before Wednesday so that students have time to give you feedback. The more complete your rough draft is, the better feedback you will get. Do not make all your posts on Sunday because then no one has time to give you feedback. The earlier you post, the more feedback you will get. Remember, feedback is your friend. Second, go to the peer review forum often. Do not just post and leave. Even after you finish your required post, go back often to see what kind of feedback others are giving you. And most importantly, you're going to look at my feedback. And then you're going to incorporate that feedback. You're going to incorporate the feedback into your paper for your final draft. So you have to look several times during the week. And then post to 2 other students and peer review their papers. You have until Sunday to peer review 2 student papers. Make sure you make your first post by Wednesday. Oh, I've said this so many times, haven't I? Wow. Make sure you have your first post by Wednesday so students have time to give you feedback. You will lose points if you post your first post after Wednesday. In other words, if you post on Thursday, you're going to get late penalty points. Include feedback corrections to the final draft of your paper. If you do not include or correct your paper for the final draft, you will lose points on your final grade. So what steps do you take in a peer review week? Basically, you post your first post you post your rough draft by Wednesday. You have until Sunday to peer review 2 student papers. And then you're going to check back to see what kind of peer review you got. Then you're going to include the corrections in your final draft for a better grade. That's it. And so, how is peer review used in the real world? Professional peer review focuses on the performance of professionals with a view to improving quality, upholding standards, or providing certification. In academia, peer review is used to inform in decisions related to faculty advancement and tenure. In some schools, faculty peer review each other's work or each other's online classes. So when I worked for the University of Phoenix, I would regularly visit other teachers' classrooms and peer review to see how bad or how well someone, did their classroom. I remember one classroom where the teacher didn't even show up for the forums for several weeks at a time, and eventually that teacher got fired because it's the teacher's job to participate and it's the teacher's job to grade papers in a timely fashion. So I've also peer reviewed other teachers' writings. So when teachers submit their writing to a peer review journal, this is where you get the peer review articles from your online library, is that in order to get accepted to be published, somebody has to read your paper to make sure that your paper has good essay structure, that it fits the formatting and the subject of that journal. And so I've done that kind of work where I edited other people's work and edited other teachers' papers. And I remember one teacher wrote a paper that was so poorly written. Then I remember having to say and I'm not the only one, it would be a group of us who would edit this person's paper and then decide whether or not this person's paper should be admitted into our journal. And so that is peer reviewing in a professional, on a professional forum. And if you get rejected, if you're a writer and you get rejected, it usually means you wrote poorly. And so when you get your paper back and you get feedback like your formatting is wrong, or your subject matter doesn't match our journal or whatnot, sometimes the journal will let you fix it and then you resubmit, just like students who resubmit their papers after they fix it, after the teacher points out all the mistakes. And so yeah, I have looked over other teachers' classrooms to peer review their classrooms, and I have also edited other teachers' papers, not just students. And that goes for scholarly peer review, known as referencing. And then scholarly peer review. In other words, what is a peer-reviewed article? A peer-reviewed article is usually an article that other writers or other teachers or scientists have looked over that article and approved of that article. And so a peer review helps the publisher know whether or not, or also helps the reader know if something is a really good article or not. And so when teachers or other professionals publish a paper, other teachers read the paper to see if the paper is good enough to be published in a professional journal. And so have you ever published an article? And actually I was reading an article saying that if a teacher gets published in a peer-reviewed article, it's better than being published in a blog or being published on the web, is if you get yourself published. And also for nurses, not just for teachers, even for nurses and for any profession, if you can get yourself published in a peer-reviewed journal, that looks really good on your resume, especially if you're going into academia. But still, it makes you look knowledgeable to the hospital, and it makes you stand out from the other candidates who may not be published. And so government peer review. And so the different departments of the government also peer review each other. So the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, through UNECE, Environmental Performance Review, uses peer review, referred to as peer learning, to evaluate progress made by its member countries in improving their environmental policies. Different countries peer review how much pollution or carbon footprint they leave behind to control climate change. And so frequently you would see in the newspaper, China and India are leaving a huge carbon footprint. But then America also, and America is only like 25% of the world's population, yet America is still the major leading pollutant, to the environment, or leaves the biggest. So in other words, different countries compare each other, peer review each other. So it's not just teachers, not just nurses, not just your job, and it's not just the peer review forum, but also governments peer review each other as well. In the medical profession, it's known as clinical peer review. A clinical peer review is a procedure for assessing patient involvement with experiences of care. It is a piece of progressing proficient practice assessment and centered proficient practice assessment. In other words, when you have medical peer review, they peer review you based on how well you treat the patient. So peer evaluation of clinical teaching skills for both physicians and teachers. Also, there's scientific peer review of journal articles. So it's similar to how teachers get peer reviewed based on how well they teach, and nurses, obviously you would know this really well, get peer reviewed based on how well they treat patients and other things. Here is an example of a peer reviewed journal, so that a nursing journal. So as a nurse, you can also write nursing articles for other nurses. Okay, so this is just an example, and it's at nursingjournal.org. I think that's the website. But I have all of it at the end of this presentation. So if you write articles for a peer-reviewed journal, it really does look good on your resume. So more experienced nurses evaluate the job performance of the less experienced nurses all the time. Nurses help each other on the job so that the new nurse can understand how everything works, since each hospital and clinic works differently. Have you ever been peer reviewed? You see, everyone knows about job reviews and job performances. Everyone knows how that works. But what they don't realize, it's also known as a peer review, and it's similar to the peer review forums that we're going to be doing in this class. That's what people don't know. Everybody knows, otherwise everybody knows what a job performance review is. That's just, everybody knows that. So here is the process by which, if you're going to submit your article to a peer-reviewed journal, researcher submits article to the journal. Then the article is reviewed by a committee, usually by teachers. So article is sent to several experts in the subject area. And then we look over the article to see if it's good enough for the journal. And then the article is usually accepted or rejected or returned to the author for a revision. So that's peer review for just about any field, if you're going to write for a peer-reviewed journal. Technical peer review in engineering. Technical peer review is a type of engineering review. Technical peer review are a well-defined review process for finding and fixing defects, conducted by a team of peers with assigned roles. Technical peer reviews are carried out by peers representing areas of life cycle affected by material being reviewed, usually limited to 6 or fewer people. Technical peer reviews are held within development phases, between milestone reviews, or completed products or completed portions of products. In other words, as something is being manufactured, made, fixed, or repaired, each step of the way, you have a manager who makes sure that whatever is being built in a good way and tested. So when something is made in a factory, each step of the way for the car to be made or whatever is being manufactured has to undergo some kind of test to make sure that the car works. So otherwise, you can't have a car that you put it together and then you put it on the street and it falls apart. You gotta have accountability. You gotta have oversight. So basically, peer review offers oversight and credibility to the customer that you are creating a good product. And a good friend of mine is an engineer, and he gets reviewed by his fellow engineers all the time. They would anonymously fill in a job performance review sheet to discuss or to evaluate a fellow friend's or another engineer's job performance. And they tell my friend that so other engineers anonymously, wrote on his job review that he gets too aggravated at work. And so that's why he hates these anonymous peer reviews. However, he loves to fill it out when it's about other people, which is interesting. So from time to time, in many professions, sometimes your peers know better how you are working than your bosses. And in the business world, every time you do a product review, like on Yelp or Amazon, you're also doing a peer review. So a bad review is when someone just says, "You suck." And as I was saying, when you do a product review on Amazon and Yelp, you're doing a peer review. In other words, different customers review the product and say if the product is good or bad. And I've done a lot of Amazon product reviews where I said, this particular vacuum cleaner lasted a year. I paid a lot of money from a big brand name and it only lasted a year and everything fell apart. Then I would tell other buyers, don't buy this product, you're wasting your money. Another time I bought a big, I forget what it was, but it stunk. Oh, it was a carpet. It was some kind of carpet. And when I took it out of the box, and even though I aired it out outside for many, many days and weeks, it still stunk. I ended up having to throw it away. And so I said, it's a total waste of money. What kind of chemicals did they put on that carpet? It's that sort of thing. So when you do the product reviews, that's also a kind of peer review of the product. And so that pretty much ends today's lecture. That pretty much ends today's lecture on what is a peer review. And so if you have any questions on anything that's covered today, you can always email me